definitely be different for everyone, but mortality itself, for me, is not a matter of perception, it's just a matter of fact. You're going to die, that's about it. How is the current pandemic changing people's perception on mortality?
Is it? I suppose we have all been told to talk to our loved ones about what we'd actually like, which makes us think about death, which is something that we'd rather not do most of the time. Because you cannot go through life thinking about dying.
Especially for people that aren't super educated. I mean, they're super worried about this, and I mean, statistically, if you look at the dynamics of the infection, general influenza kills more people. It's a media-fueled pandemic, is what I think, and I mean, the government's instituting these lockdowns because they do need to control it, but it's to take the burden off the health systems.
I think it's making it much more tangible, especially now that there's data as well that's coming out about how many people are sadly dying. It's kind of bringing it to the forefront. I know that the government have kind of tried to persuade people to talk about death more openly, especially if you're a vulnerable or elderly person.
I don't know that I'm frightened about it necessarily for myself. Obviously, I think I'm probably more worried about, think more about other people. I know I still think an awful lot about, my mum and dad who both died, and about Victor's dad, Nacho. I attend church most weeks if I can, not at the moment. You do think about death not being the end, but actually just moving on to another sort of life with God.
So what happens after we die? Now, when I was growing up, I was taught that I would be immortal after I died. So even as a kid, I was absolutely terrified of that. The idea of eternity, I don't think human beings can grasp it. It's too big for us. And I hope that when I die, I just die and I'm just gone. I don't live on in any other plane, and I don't come back for any reason. I'm just gone. The thing that terrifies me the most about dying is that when I die, God will be there and he'll say, "Surprise, bitch."
I don't think my initial thought wouldn't have been, oh my God, Victor's going to die. I think you just, when things like that happen, you just have to stay focused on something. And yeah, so I know that it changed the way that I was with Victor, because I think I was more protective, more worried about him when he was younger. I mean, he went through such a lot, and it was just so, in his life he's had to go through so many things, and as a parent you just don't want that for your child. You want the best for them, and obviously he had to learn to walk again and all sorts of things. The time that I recall now as to being the most, or it coming home to me the most that he might die, is after his operation, which I think he was in the operating theatre for about 7 or 8 hours, and obviously I was at the hospital because I stayed at the hospital for the week or so when he was in, and after they came back and said, oh, he's out of the operation, but they said, but he's not woken up yet, and that all of a sudden, I can remember that thinking, oh God, so what if he doesn't, maybe he's had the operation but he won't wake up, ever. But, so, obviously, he did. I think he was in intensive care overnight, and I think they think that probably what had happened is his body was just so tired that basically it just slept. So he did wake up several hours later, but that was, I can remember at the time, I think the time when I can most remember thinking, oh my God, he might not wake up again. And it made me very sad thinking about it.
Mortality. Yeah, 6 weeks ago I had a heart attack, massive heart attack. Before that, fit and healthy came out of the blue. Kind of changed my whole perception on mortality. I was kind of that person that was like, well, death comes to us all, it happens. When it comes, it comes, you know. But I was on that operating table at 36-year-old, getting told by a surgeon that if I'd left it any longer before phoning the doctors, I would not be here now, you know. And that kind of makes you shook a little bit. I realised at that moment in time that I've got so much more life to live, and that I had to change a few things in my life to make sure that I am not on that table again, having my heart worked on to make sure I stop alive, basically. It is the scariest thought in the world, knowing that there's nothing you can do in that moment to live or die. It is in someone else's hands, and seeing every possibility that could happen is absolute horrible.
I'm absolutely terrified of death, and I'm one of those people that's just really scared about it. You don't know when and how it's going to happen. You know, I could wake up tomorrow morning, go on my daily run and get hit by a bus. I could die in a plane crash in 10 years. I could be a middle-aged man with my own family and be told I have X amount of months to live. Or I may not even wake up tomorrow morning. So I think that's the main fear. It's not knowing when, it's not knowing how.
I think I've accepted my mortality, not because of any sort of brush with death or anything like that, but just because by nature we're all going to die at some point, and there's nothing really you can do about that whatsoever. I find it to sort of be a weight lifted from my mind to accept that we tread a very thin line between life and death every day, in a sense that one small moment of any given day at any time, a freak accident or something like that, is all it takes for you to not be here anymore, and that's it. That's your time.
Ask your grandma on a deathbed what's worth worrying about, and she'll tell you that mostly nothing other than your family and your friends and your health. Little things don't matter, and that's what it reminds you of. So it's definitely worth thinking about your own mortality, because knowing that you're going to die one day allows you to live.